the beginning of the 8th century, Iberia, Spain and Portugal, had been ruled for 200 years by the Visigoths, who had invaded from eastern Germany. They were a barbarian people ruled by Roderick, the Gothic king of Spain, whose court was in Toledo. By 708 AD, the Arab armies had invaded and advanced across North Africa to the Atlantic Ocean. All of Morocco was subdued except Ceuta, which was opposite Spain, separated by the Straits, a distance of only 9 miles. An African chief, a convert to Islam during the Arab invasion of Morocco, was a great general named Tariq. He was given the rank of general in the Arab armies and the governorship of Mauritania by Musa ibn Nusayr, the Arab governor of North Africa. Tariq had befriended Count Julian, governor of Ceuta, and discovered that he wanted revenge against his master, Roderick, for dishonoring his daughter. Thus urged to invade Spain, Tariq then informed Musa of his intention to cross the straits to explore the possibilities for an invasion. In 710, a small army under General Tariq, composed of 400 men and 100 horses, invaded Spain, plundered the town of Algeciras, as well as neighboring towns, and returned to Africa, their boats laden with spoils. With this event, one of the most important, productive, and progressive epochs of world history began and would continue for nearly 800 years. Through this empire of the Moors, the foundations for many institutions of modern Europe were laid. Further, the way for the explorations of the Spaniards and Portuguese that led to the finds in the New World and Africa was prepared during the time of the Moors in Al-Andalus, as their empire in Europe came to be known. Historian Stanley Lane Poole states in The Story of the Moors in Spain, on April 30th, 711 AD, encouraged by the success of Tariq's invasion, Tariq led an army of 7,000 men, of which 6,700 were native Africans, Moors, and 300 were Arabs. After crossing the straits and landing on the Spanish coast, Tariq seized a steep cliff and ordered a fortress to be built upon the advantageous spot. His troops named the site Gabel Tariq, the Hill of Tariq, later to be known as Gibraltar. Tariq went on to capture Algeciras and Cartaya. As he progressed through the countryside, many Spanish natives eagerly joined him to fight the ruling Visigoths. On the 18th of July, Tariq, with about 14,000 troops, defeated Roderick and his 60,000 troops. Who were these Moors who could so successfully invade and conquer what was a strong and well-established kingdom in southern Europe, that of the Visigoths, who had, in their time, taken Iberia from the Roman Empire? As we have seen, the forces led by Tariq were black Africans, Moroccan Berbers, and a small number of Arabs. Those Africans had over time and through the conquests of Islam come as far as the regions of present-day Kenya and Ethiopia in East Africa and Mali and Senegal in Southwest Africa. The Moorish Empire was clearly an African one. As historian Dr. Chancellor Williams describes them, the original Moors, like the original Egyptians, were black Africans. As amalgamation became more and more widespread, only the Berbers, Arabs, and Coloreds in the Moroccan territories were called Moors, while the darkest and black-skinned Africans were called Blackamoors. Eventually, black was dropped from Blackamoor, and, as a European scholar of that time described them, the reins of their horses were as fire, their faces black as pitch, their eyes shone like burning candles, their horses were swift as leopards, and the riders fiercer than a wolf in the sheepfold at night. We are all familiar with Shakespeare's Othello the Moor. These same Africans and Arabs were followers of Muhammad, Muslims. As we will learn, their early allegiance was to Damascus in Syria. Later, because they developed and wielded their own great power and influence in the Islamic world, that center of loyalty and allegiance would shift to within their own Al-Andalus. After Tariq's first victories, he went on to win more battles and conquer more land and cities. Toledo, Elvira, and Córdoba were among those that fell to Tariq's armies. Toledo was actually handed over to the invading Tariq by the Jews of the city, who also supplied him with arms and horses. According to historian Stanley Lane Poole, Córdoba was left in the keeping of the Jews because they had been staunch allies of the Muslims during the campaign. The Moors granted the Jews great considerations and never persecuted them as the Gothic priests had done. Within 3 years, the conquest of Iberia was complete, and these Moorish warriors retired into Spain and proceeded to build a new kingdom. And what a kingdom it would be! Europe, and what we call the Western world, would change forever. The distinguished historian Basil Davidson declares that there were no lands at that time, the 8th century, more admired by its neighbors or more comfortable to live in than the rich African kingdom which took shape in Spain. When Tariq and his armies arrived in Iberia, Europe was in the midst of its dark ages. The Visigoths, who ruled Iberia at the time, according to Wayne Chandler, were a vigorous, rather barbaric people who, as Christians, believed in religious compensation for their vices. The key word here is barbaric. Writers of the time offer such descriptions as, "They are nearer animals than men. They are by nature unthinking, and their manners crude. Their bellies protrude, their color is white, and their hair is long. In sharpness and delicacy of spirit and in intellectual understanding, they are nil. Ignorance, lack of reasoning power, and boorishness are common among them." Elsewhere in Europe, life was similar. In his History of the Crusades, the Moorish writer Michaud describes the Prussians of the 13th century as just a few stages above savagery. In an essay, Edward Scobie writes, "The palaces of the then rulers of Germany, France, and England were, when compared with those of the Moorish rulers of Spain and Portugal, scarcely better than the stables of the Moors." With the arrival of the Moors, a time of advanced civilization and enlightenment began in Europe. They brought with them from Africa their vast knowledge in many fields. They had access to and drew upon the knowledge of the previous African scholars, Egyptians, Ethiopians, and the Greeks. The Kingdom of Al-Andalus would establish institutions that would last until the present day and serve to enrich and enlighten Europe. Legends and mythologies were created through which the people of the Islamic world and of Christian Europe would until now secure their identities, beliefs, and values. Legends such as the Song of Roland from France, King Arthur and the Crusades, Lancelot and the Black Knight, Saint Maurice, a patron saint in the traditions of the Germanic peoples, Antar and Ziryab, the great Moorish singer, musician, and stylist, came from the time of this great empire. Science, philosophy, navigation, mathematics, and more were taught and developed. The cultures of Spain, Portugal, Sicily, France, Britain, and the Slovak countries were all positively influenced by this contact. We too, in our time, must give credit for our lives and culture to these Moors. The cities of Córdoba, Toledo, Granada, Sevilla, Coimbra, and Lisbon were their greatest achievements, since they embodied all of the other contributions and have been the longest lasting. According to Stanley Lane Poole, we learn, Córdoba in the 10th century was very much like a modern city. Its streets were well paved and there were raised sidewalks for pedestrians. At night, one could walk for 10 miles by the light of lamps, flanked by an uninterrupted extent of buildings. This was hundreds of years before there was a paved street in Paris, France, or a street lamp in London, England. The population of Córdoba was over 1 million. There were 200,000 homes, 800 public schools, and many colleges and universities. Córdoba possessed 10,000 palaces of the wealthy, besides many royal palaces surrounded by beautiful gardens. There were even 5,000 mills in Córdoba at a time when there was not even one in the rest of Europe. There were also 900 public baths, besides a large number of private ones, at a time when the rest of Europe considered bathing as extremely sinful and to be avoided as much as possible. Córdoba was also graced by a system of over 4,000 public markets. The Great Mosque of Córdoba, another grand structure, had a scarlet and gold roof with 1,000 columns of porphyry and marble. It was lit by more than 200 silver chandeliers containing more than 1,000 silver lamps burning perfumed oil. Imagine a city in the 10th century with street lamps. The inhabitants of Moorish cities like Granada, Córdoba, and Toledo in the 12th and 13th centuries enjoyed a style of life that would not be achieved in Paris or London until centuries later. The Great Mosque, still known by its Islamic name, the Mezquita, is one of the great Islamic sites in Córdoba. It is no longer used as a mosque. According to tradition, the original mosque was built on a site which was shared with the Christian church. Stanley Lane Poole tells us that among the great architectural beauties of Córdoba, the principal mosque held and still holds first place. It was begun in 784 by the first Abderrahman, who spent 8,000 pieces of gold upon it, which he got from the spoils of the Goths. Hisham, his pious son, completed it in 793 with the proceeds from the sacking of Narbonne. Each succeeding sultan added some new beauty to the building. Also located in Córdoba is the Alcázar, a great palace begun in 1328 by the Christian king Alfonso XI. This palace has significance because it was built during the time when the Moors still reigned in Spain. Its architectural style and gardens have been mostly influenced by the styles of the Moors. It is clear in this instance how much Moorish influence permeated the life of Al-Andalus even after the defeat of local Moorish monarchs. It was at the Alcázar that the last of the Moorish kings, Boabdil el Chico of Granada, lived as a captive of the Catholic monarchs, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. And it was here that these same monarchs received Columbus before he started on his first voyage. In Granada, we can still find some of the most striking, beautiful, and important of the palaces and fortifications left from this empire, particularly the Alhambra and the Generalife. As we look at the Alhambra, we see a complex of palaces which includes the fortress of the Alcazaba. The earliest references to fortifications on this site is 888 to 912, during the reign of Abdallah, the Emir of Al-Andalus. This reference is to a castle that protected its troops. After being abandoned, it was rebuilt and enlarged, we learn in the essay by Dario Rodriguez, by the Jew Samuel ibn Nagrallah, for the purpose of protecting the Jewish quarter. In 1238, the construction of the complex as it has become was started by Muhammad I. Enlargement, strengthening of the fortifications, and refinements continued generation to generation until the reign of Muhammad V during the late 14th century. When Ferdinand and Isabella took over the Alhambra in 1492, they declared it a royal residence as testimony to their conquest of the Moors. This initiated the maintenance and preservation of the Moorish palace, the only one that remains nearly intact and well preserved until today. Using advanced drainage and irrigation systems, reservoirs, and aqueducts, the Moors kept the surrounding countryside fertile and productive and established efficient marketing, transportation, and trading networks. According to Jan Carew, the Moors also brought the countryside into their cities with fantastic gardens, parks, lush inner courtyards, and a constant supply of pure water. The gardens in Moorish cities, both public and private ones, were known as paradises, a fitting term with which to describe those exquisite botanical marvels. The water wheel was another significant contribution of the Moors to the life of Al-Andalus. The remains of one of their wheels can be seen today at the Guadalquivir River in Córdoba. This enhancement, with its extensive irrigation systems, not only allowed for the cultivation of existing crops, but as well the introduction of new crops such as cotton, rice, sugarcane, dates, ginger, lemons, and strawberries. It also made possible the driving of machines and the development of gardens and landscapes of unsurpassed beauty. Water was put to use to benefit the people at large. Through the images we see in the Generalife, with its fountains and cascades, we can confirm the level of sophisticated technological development that the Moors introduced and refined in Al-Andalus. A most obvious and important one being the introduction of baths and the habit of bathing. During the arrival of the Moors, the people of Europe were discouraged from bathing by both religious and so-called medical powers. It was preached and believed that by exposing one's humors, pseudo-medical spiritual elements of the body, one became vulnerable to bad spirits that brought sickness and disease. Water played a very important part in the religious ritual of the Moors. Pure, clean water was used not only to clean the body, but to enhance, beautify, and enrich the earth and the environment, as well as to provide a music to enrich the soul. In summarizing this first part, we have learned that the Moors arrived in Spain in 711 AD as conquerors. They settled there and proceeded to build the new kingdom of Al-Andalus, a civilization of great learning and architectural achievement. Join us as we look in greater detail in Part 2 at the remarkable ways in which the Moors bridged the cultural gap between the ancient civilizations of Egypt and Greece and those of the modern era.